Hey everyone, this is Cary Kolat and Matt Dernlan on the podcast The Way, presented by Rudis. It's been a podcast we've been doing for quite some time now, just in aspects of coaching. Me being a current Division One head coach, and Matt a former Division One head coach. And we've had some interesting conversations, some great questions. Matt, how'd the week go this week, man? Busy?
Good, busy, man. We're just good problems. We got a bunch of sales positions we're trying to hire. So, instead of going out and looking for people, we went to hunt them down. So I've been spending the last couple of days visiting with college programs around the state, talk about opportunities because so it's been good.
Yeah, I know. We talked a little bit about that. It's great that Rudis is growing and filling these positions, and I'm sure you've been hitting a lot of college coaches trying to find like guys who are tied to the sport and have knowledge of the sport, and absolutely in the business world being reliable, which it's tough. It's tough to find reliable people in almost any field, I feel like. So anyway, the question we had this week was was discussion on how to handle guys leaving the team, quitting the team, at the college level, and it happens. And I don't know how you feel about it here. So I've always felt that the sophomore year is a time frame where I see guys saying maybe this isn't for me, and then the junior year is probably a big one. I think when a guys come, when you recruit them, you tell them that the goal of the program is to make it very difficult for you to get into the starting lineup. That way, if you get into the starting lineup, you're prepped and ready because we're a solid team, and you're expected to win when you get out there, and you feel like you can win. And a guy's training, and then I feel like the junior year is the real tough one, and the guy kind of sees the writing on the wall saying this is going to be really tough for me to get in the lineup. But it's hard to keep kids along. That's why, wrestling has a very high attrition rate. Like we've always said, it's not like football, it's not like basketball, it's not like other sports where it's a team, and you may not be the starting linebacker or something, but you're going to get some playing time. And in wrestling, we just always, unless you have a lot of depth, you don't get that playing time. You don't get to wear the singlet all the time, in your arena. But I don't know how you felt about it, but that I feel like the junior year, sophomore year is a big part.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's, this is one of the things that I always had constant communications with my administrations about, because, it's not a retention sport. And explaining that to your administration, you're like, well, you got guys leaving the team. I'm like, well, if you pretty much look at any class that you bring in, by the end, whatever the number is, 10, 15, 20 guys, like, through my experience, if 5 of those guys make it to their 4th or 5th year, that's kind of the usual retention rate. You're gonna lose guys. You got that big chunk, I think their freshman year when they jump in, they're like, "Holy heck, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I was expecting at all. Like, this isn't something for me." But and so those are normal things. So when freshman guys would quit, I'm like, "All right, number one, if you get to the point where you actually come knock on my door, sit down in my office and tell me you want to quit, it's probably something you've been thinking about for quite a while. Because that's a difficult thing to look your coach in the eye and say you want to do that. But after that, like looking into the sophomore, junior year, the biggest thing that I would get from guys is the way they feel. And by that, I mean, guys would say, I just don't feel the same about the sport, coach. I felt certain ways in high school. I don't feel the same way about the sport of wrestling now in college. And I tried to explain to guys, I'm like, hey, that's a normal process in your emotional maturity. As you're getting older, your shape of the world, your shape of the sport becomes different. And in life and in wrestling, it comes down to, and I would try and explain to guys, it's a choice. Like whatever you do from here on out, once you get into your 20s, life is about committing to choices. It's not about feelings, because you're rarely ever going to feel like the emotional way you felt about the sport when you were in high school, right? And so the perspective I try to get guys, I'm like, yeah, this is a normal feeling. I know it feels weird because at a certain point, the whole emotion of the sport wears off. The music to get yourself hyped up doesn't do the same thing. And it's a flip you got to switch in your head. Like, I'm committing to this sport. I'm committing to be good, whatever, regardless of the outcome, good or bad. This is the choice I've committed to. And I would explain to guys, like, this isn't just about wrestling, guys. This is about life. There's going to be times in your job you don't want to work this job. It's not fun. There's parts in your relationship where you feel the same way, like, oh, this relationship isn't fun. It's like, yeah, marriage is tough, guys. It's about commitment. It's not about, yeah, there's love there and there's deep commitments there, but the feeling, the emotional feelings wear off. So I think that just puts guys off, as they're maturing in college, as their view and shape of the world changes a little bit. I think it's a foreign thing to them. When I was like, what you're feeling is natural. You're thinking it's strange and it's foreign, but I'm like, no, this is a completely natural feeling that you're going through.
Right, right. Everything you said is basically the same for me. I'm going to gauge a guy. I'm going to look how he's contributing to the team. I'm going to look and say, is it worthwhile for him to continue? Because there are some guys who've come in, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably not right for you. It's probably, in high school you had success, and yeah, you're really pretty much far off from where you should be, and you can see it in the drive in the practice room, right? We all kind of see it. I will tell you this: there's, always heard the saying is beg, borrow, and steal, right? And so I try to pick the brain of coaches and coaching at this level and get information and guys who are former coaches, and I try to get all these bits of information that could help you, just like you did as an athlete. You're trying to steal technique all the time from different guys and make it fit your style. And now it's about fitting your style of coaching. When I was at UNC, I forget his name, but they've won like 21 female soccer NCAA titles. And he's a big deal on the UNC campus. Well, he had a test that he would give his team, and basically what he would do is he would make them all answer. It was like 30 to 50 questions on every one of their teammates. And what he really wanted them to do is assess their teammates, and then he would take all that information, he would compile it. And I was having a rocky year, and I felt like it was time to try this. And basically, we quizzed everybody on their teammate. Socially, was he up to standards at Campbell? As a practice guy, was he competitive in the practice room, trying to improve and pushing you? Did you get inspired when he put the singlet on and wrestled for us? Academics, did he meet our standards? Did you feel like, and you may not know anything about the guy's academics. The question is, did you always see him studying? Those are the things we wanted to find out. And with that, I'd bring the guys into the year and say, look, this is how your team looks at you, not how I look at you. And when you add up all the categories, you're in the bottom, 20%, or you're in the top 10%. And that was always a good gauge for me. And I saw a lot of guys that when I had their peers assess them, I saw changes in guys. And I also saw guys say, they're right, coach. It's not time for me. This is not for me anymore. And so their teammates saw it, right? Everybody saw this picture. Sometimes guys would move on faster, and they needed to move on faster because quitting's not always a bad thing. It's time for you to move your in a different direction in your life, and it could be good for the program as well, because when you have a lot of guys who just don't have that fire, some guy who's trying to be a national champ and some guy who is not trying anymore, they can bring your program down. So that quiz or that assessment was really good in that area. But it was also good because I tell you, I had a guy, and he was thinking about transferring, and he had a lot of factors. Was he going to compete at this level? Then financial cost, all these things, right? That weigh into it. He was the top 5% of my team. He was the top 5% of my team when my guys, and I realized if that kid left, it would be demoralizing to my program. Like, one guy doesn't make a team, we know that, but it's just a hit that you don't want to take. And so when I did that, and we did everything in our power to convince this guy to stay, and he stayed, and he's a big player in our team. And 2 years ago, he was about to leave. He was doubting himself. He was questioning himself. And when I explained to him that you don't understand, you think you're not contributing and you're not in the starting lineup right now, but everybody on this team has you in the top 5% of what we believe a Campbell wrestler should be. And so it was a nice little thing that I learned. It was, and I use it now about once every 2 years. I probably go back and I say, okay, you're going to get quizzed on everybody on the program. But I feel like that thing helped me, and it also helped me for some guys. It was time for them to move on too, and kept the program moving in the right direction.
Well, I think when it comes down to the guys in the team and your roster, I mean, that's the ultimate polygraph, right? I mean, they can listen to you and sit down with the coaching staff and walk away from that meeting. It's like, oh, coach has this bias. He just has this perspective. He's just trying to tell me what I want to hear. But when you have that perspective from the guys on your team, I mean, you can't hide from that. I mean, that's like I said, that's the ultimate polygraph. I mean, they're living with you all the time. Like we get to see these guys, if we're lucky, maybe 4 hours a day, possibly, maybe four, but very few. But your teammates, they see you for 10, 12 hours of the day. So, when it comes
Yeah,
for them.
it was a good wake up call. I'm telling you, I was like when I heard him. It was a head coaches meeting that we were sitting around, and everybody was given their bits of information and things that they do. But what this guy did, I took and I used, and it really did help me assess some guys. But I will tell you, it probably helped more in changing guys that I couldn't believe. When I sat down and told them what their teammates thought of them, there were some guys get angry, right? Some guys get angry. Well, they're not seeing me, but it's a fact. They always say it. Not everybody thinks they can assess themselves, but the truth is, yeah. I mean, how many of us have always said like, "Oh, will you do that?" And you're like, "No, I don't. I don't do that." Right? But the truth is, the five closest people around you will know your quirks, and you think you don't have them because it's really impossible for somebody to really assess themselves.
Right.
So you go to the five closest people. So when their peers assess them, I got a lot of changes out of guys in the positive way, more than it would get from me being critical of them. But when their teammates were critical of them, they changed. And some changed for the better. Some said they're right, I need to move on. And other guys didn't realize how valuable they were to the program, and they stuck around and continued to change our program. So,
So with your guy,
um,
this what I would want to know. This guy that wanted to quit 2 years ago, who's stuck around now, he's a big contributor. What's his perspective? Have you gone back and revisited like, hey, when you're reflecting from 2 years ago, how do you see it now? Not when you were in the moment, but how does he see that moment in time now, and how does he reflect on that?
well, if you're part of our program, you're going to find out that almost everybody on this team, we work hard, the staff works hard, but at the same time, we're ball busters, man, and we break everybody's balls. And we'll always joke about it when he'll walk by. I'll be like, "Hey, you were the guy that was quitting 2 years, remember?" And he'll be like, I know, I was a dumb decision, coach. I wasn't thinking." And yeah, I mean, that would have been a guy that maybe not had I not had that information, had I not been able to share with him. I always knew he was valuable, but if I didn't have that information from his teammates, I may have lost him. We may have lost that guy. And his parents were kind of, to some extent, they were pushing him to get out a little bit, and their mindset was more on the financial side of it, in which every parent, there's a financial side to being at a university if you're not a full scholarship athlete, and I could look at those as a parent and say, I agree with you. But I also, what you don't understand is your son is extremely talented and a big contributor, and he's going to get a lot. And now, had I not had that information, I may have lost that kid.
Yeah.
And now he's a big player.
And it's got to be, I mean,
And he was a big player before he was.
yeah, and I think moving forward, hopefully he has the success and finishes his career the way he wants it to. But I think regardless of that, moving forward, that moment in time 2 years ago, that was a foundational moment in his life that he's going to be able to
Yeah.
draw upon for the next 50, 60, 70 years. And it's that
Yeah.
moment where he's like, look, I was in the crosshairs of a tough decision where, yeah, every indication to me personally said take the way out. And
Yeah.
he stood his ground, he dug in, and like I said, regardless of what he does in his competitive career, he's going to be able to draw on that situation for the rest of his life and draw strength from
Yeah.
that and know how to lead his life just a little bit better.
Well, things aren't supposed to be comfortable, right? Like that's what we think, but there's a reason why. If I were to ask you, like, I don't know if you can think back. I'll go to two. Think back. As an athlete, can you remember your favorite match of all time? And I don't care what level; it doesn't matter to me. Wrestling's wrestling. Elementary, middle school, high school, college. What's the favorite match when you competed that you said was this is my favorite match?
It was probably the one that made me most uncomfortable, that tested me the most. Like,
Who was it? Do you remember a name?
yeah, I mean, it was a high school match. This guy, it was actually, I was with his brother yesterday.
Okay.
His name was John Marchetti. Um, it,
Yeah. I know Machete.
yeah,
Okay, so what was the score of the match?
it was 5-2.
Did you win or lose?
I won.
You won. Okay, you won 5-2. All right, now let me ask the next question. As a coach, when you were coaching, what was your favorite duel mate? I guess that when you were the head coach, like what would have been a favorite dual meet of yours?
I think the first time, I think, and this is probably going into one of the next topics that we were talking about. It was when I was up at Binghamton, and when I came into the conference, we were in the CAA, and
Uh-huh.
Hofstra kind of traditionally dominated the conference. And
Yeah,
so I knew coming in, like, all right, if we're going to establish the program and move it forward, this is the program, that we've got our eyes set
to be.
on. So
Yeah,
when we beat them for the first time, it was it wasn't that the outcome, it was more like where it was moving the program, the statement that it was making for the
yeah.
program about where
Okay,
we
so
are.
my point to all that is this. So you didn't tell me my favorite match is when I pin this guy, and you didn't say my favorite match is when I beat this guy by 15 points. And you had a dual meet, you had a program. Basically, you're telling me Hofstra was kicking your butts for a long time, and you needed to establish your program. So you went after the one that was being. So that 5-4 match was not a blowout; it was a real struggle. And when you ask people that question and you always go back, that nobody ever tells you it's when I pinned this guy or when I tech this guy. It's always the matches that they won by a point or lost by a point. And reality is everybody really does love to struggle because struggle makes it worthwhile. And to get back to the guy that was going to leave 2 years ago, it was a struggle for him to stay. And now it is the struggle that defines him from here on out. Because now when things get really tough, he'll think about that day. I was going to pack it in, and now look at me. I'm one of the biggest contributors. And one during that middle of that struggle, like that's what we remember. You remember a 5-4 match from high school, but you didn't tell me you pinned a guy or teched a guy, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And
those are the ones, I mean, you look past it, you forget those because that's what you expect to do. You feel that right away, and
yes,
it's like,
yeah,
one of the things we talk about is because we basically have a college team. We got a bunch of people pretty much under the age of 25, and so the biggest
yeah,
thing that we talk to the team about here is, like, getting comfortable leaning into discomfort. It's like that's where
yeah.
you get an appreciation out of life. You get an appreciation out of accomplishment
Accomplishment.
when you have to struggle, when you have to fight for it. Nothing, I mean, these are all, like, analogies we
Yeah.
use all the time. It's the struggle makes it meaningful. The struggle makes it
Or the
work.
favorite one. The favorite one as a parent, I have, my kids are getting older, and I always tell them, a dollar you earned is worth way more than when I give to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we always know it's like, and that's the same thing. It's a struggle. The first time you do it, it becomes more important and more valuable. And that's in reality, that's why you do it. So
And one
this guy, his
I'm
go
sorry
ahead.
to jump in there, but I was gonna say, and once you get that feeling, when you have to overcome a struggle, overcome an obstacle,
Yeah.
like, you start seeking out those things, like, yeah,
Yep.
that really created meaning. This experience, regardless of
Yeah.
the outcome, win or losing, like, the experience and the appreciation, like, I want more of that. I want more. Coach,
Yeah.
put me in these situations more. Give me a better schedule, practice from whatever. And when guys that's as a coach, when you get your athletes to that point, you're like, all right, not only are you prepared to be successful in life, you're prepared for life as well.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. It's got to be hard, man. It's got to be hard, and you got to want it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, all right, Matt. Well, listen, man. I think it was awesome talking to you this week, and we catch up next week. And again, if you have questions and you're watching this video, please leave the comments at the bottom. You got something you want Matt and I to hit in terms of coaching perspective. We're glad to do it, and have a good week.
All right. Thanks, Cary.